Hi, my name's John, and this is Business Update. In this week's episode, we'll be talking about uh, the the release of the latest model for the Nintendo Switch, the OLED screen version. Is it a good purchase here? Obviously, there were anticipation with regards to the next iteration of the Nintendo Switch, but it's not what everyone was expecting. They were expecting the Nintendo Switch Pro with better or superior specs, but all we got is a better screen. Now, is it worthwhile to invest on it or replace your existing Switch? We'll discuss that in a bit. Next is we'll be discussing also with regards to the recent launch of the Amazon's game of New World. Now there has been a plethora of issues and it keeps on getting bigger and bigger, and it's all started with the crash of many GPUs, in particular the EVGA GPU brand of your GPU, where it crashed. And actually, what's interesting, EVGA replaced all of those brick GPU because of the game's compatibility. Now, there are other issues that's been cropping out, which just leads to concern with regards to how the developers did they actually test it thoroughly before they actually release the game. We'll discuss that in a bit. And next is the issue with Evergrande with the Go cities in China. What are the repercussions if things go array? We'll talk about that. And lastly, the one of the popular Netflix shows, the Squid Game. The game somewhat reflects reality here, so we'll take a closer look at that. So to start off, first one, as mentioned, the release of the latest Nintendo Switch iteration, which is the OLED version, should be brought with excitement for a lot of people. But obviously, is it enough for you to upgrade your existing Switch console for an OLED screen? Now, OLED screen obviously provides better gaming experience in terms of clarity and so forth. But obviously, as a gamer, a part-time gamer at that, we always want to have better features like better battery capacity, long-lasting battery, better specs so that you could play more AAA games and so forth. But with the release of the OLED screen, there has been a mixed result from the gaming community. Now, was the OLED Switch cater to the existing gaming community, or they're trying to capitalize on new gamers who haven't bought an existing Switch? Now, is it the right strategy? Will it pan out? Let's see here. So one of the features that the new Switch is offering, not just the OLED screen, is a better kickstand that you can see. It's much wider compared to the original one, and obviously with regards to the kickstand, it's catered to for tabletop gameplay here, and in particular is for the game of Mario Party, obviously, which is one of their main IPs of solidifying their popularity, not just Mario games. You have Mario Party, Smash Brothers, and Zelda, and even Metroid, and on and on and on. Now, will it convince buyers to purchase this latest iteration? Now, knowing that there's competition coming on the horizon, namely Valve's planned release of the Steam Deck, which is going to be released sometime later this year, or hopefully in our country early next year. Will the OLED Switch be enough to compete with, if the Steam Deck can provide or even come close to what it's advertising in the reviews? It's going to squash or even hurt the sales of the Switch. And even I think there were reports for the Switch to even after the release recent launch of the OLED Switch, there have been already reports that there will be a newer version of the Switch sometime in the future, whether it's a year or 2 years from now, or even more. We have to wait and see. So anyway, so will it be a compelling case enough for many users to make this a splurge? Anyway, so with regards to Nintendo Switch promises, so that the goal is the ability to easily play multiplayer and games on the go. Now, obviously, they want you to buy more units, so they generate more revenue and obviously have a better experience here in terms of multiplayer. Now, is it enough to convince buyers to make this purchase? Obviously, playing Nintendo Switch, you only have a plethora but limited library compared to other platforms like Sony's PlayStation and even Microsoft's Xbox here. Now, obviously, in terms of quality, obviously you expect a great build quality with their with their consoles, so to speak here. Now, they mentioned that it's not just the games, not the console itself that they are focusing on, but as well as leveraging not just on the existing IPs that they have, previous games and future launch of the games. Then they recently advertised or released the better online Switch games, which I kind of have an issue with regards to its pricing, because you're charging double the amount for retro games, and that's a different discussion altogether. But with all of those things combined, is it enough to convince new gamers or even existing gamers to switch to upgrade their console here? Now, for me personally speaking, it takes a lot more for me to shell out 10-20,000 bucks for a new consoles that I'm still happy with my existing Switch console. Anyway, looking at the console here, as you can see, it looks much better. Obviously, the the joystick drift issue is another discussion that we need to focus on, because as mentioned in previous discussion and previous article, that they keep on insisting that it's part of gameplay when you use it, but we don't know if there's a factory defect here that over long periods of usage will it it would yield drifting issues here. And I think from my personal experience, I only use it less than a year and I already encountered drifting issues. You would think that you need hours, tens of hours or hundreds of hours of gameplay or heavy usage, especially if you're using it for example is fighting game, where you're very deliberate in using the joystick controls so that it would deteriorate faster than necessary. But it's a case-to-case experience here. But still, so they're leveraging on the popularity of multiplayer games such as Mario Party and Superstars to improve, or not necessarily improve, but to engage their core customer base here. Now, obviously, the issue with the original Switch is the kickstand was too small and flimsy to say the least here. So that I never use it in a kickstand mode. I tend to use it in a portable mode. So if I'm sitting, in my chair or in the bed, relaxing, so you can play it in any way that you prefer. Now, looking at how it looks, obviously the visual fidelity with an OLED screen will always be better than a regular one, but it's not nowhere close to, let's say, if you're expecting for a 4K experience. And that's say to least you have to dock it first, not necessarily having it in a portable mode here. Now, convincing people to make that switch or continue buying their products, I think it needs more features, and obviously the games. I think at the end of the day, to convince people, I'm looking forward for the latest next sequel for the Zelda Breath of the Wild, but that's far few in between, so I'm not convinced to shell out the extra money to pay for an upgraded version. I mean, I was thinking earlier to buy another console for my kids to use, but knowing now that there's a Steam Deck on the horizon, so I'm waiting maybe sometime next year. I might buy it and then let my kids use the Switch consoles for their usage. So maybe I can save there and get better value in this case. So we'll see. Anyway, so continuing, Next, we have another game. So, in gaming world, if you're familiar with the new world, which we've discussed, there were issues galore if you were playing it. Now, some if you are the unlucky ones who encountered, your GPUs getting break, especially EVGA cards, because of the compatibility issues, which I was surprised to hear when this occurred. And it's not just the GPUs that could, hardware wise, and uh, the game itself is problematic in itself. So meaning, why would developers, publish games that's not yet polished, check thoroughly for any bugs, so that when people buy it, there's no issues that could harm your PC, your hardware, or even your software component. Imagine it's not just your GPU that can be bricked, maybe your CPU, which unlikely can occur, but it's a possibility, or even your RAM, right? Which is obviously a very expensive endeavor if that were to break down all of a sudden. Now, as I mentioned earlier, now when EVGA encountered this, they were willingly to replace it right off the bat, even though it's not their fault. Partly could be the game itself, which they didn't test it thoroughly if it's compatible with majority of the cards here. But nonetheless, the issue now has shifted significantly. So according to the article here, you can see that the game in itself it's not only dysfunctional and it's broken now. You can criticize the compatibility here and so forth. Obviously, certain games requires more higher specs, better GPUs, CPUs, and whatnot, or even storage space for your games. If the game in itself it's broken, similar to how Cyberpunk 2077 was released, for all the tremendous effort they've made in their marketing strategy. But if the game that was released is not as advertised, and this all boils down to the company making a wrong choice, obviously trying to make a quick buck here, thinking that people would not be wise enough to realize this. Now, that's why the pre-order concept should be thrown away, because they're leveraging on the hype rather than the actual product itself. Because if it's not if the product doesn't provide what it's intended for, meaning gameplay that we could focus, is the game worthwhile, is the experience tremendous, then people would buy it, and through word of mouth. But obviously, using promotions, marketing to enhance its position, creates a lot of loopholes in a sense, right? Confusion, especially if the reviews are not yet out. So you bought it already, so on day one, if there are issues, you don't get to have time to think about it. Obviously, the companies here, or even the publishers, are trying to find ways to ensure that you will have very little to no time to consider whether the product is ideal or not. Anyway, so according to a famous Twitch streamer, as Asmongold. Anyway, so the Amazon New World closed beta for PC, according to him, the game is still far from the release date, and the trouble ahead for Amazon's New World RPG title. So even though the game has been available for the past few days and April is able to watch and even play, obviously there are issues that you will encounter here. Now, obviously, having bugs is part of the experience in gaming, but having significant problems is a totally different case here. Imagine buying a smartphone, cars, or any appliances that you would you would buy. You expect it to work right off the bat, right? If it does not work, then you would return it and expect a refund of sorts. But with softwares galores, whether it's games or for your devices, whether it's laptop or smartphones, there's a loophole in a sense that they will fix it by updating of sorts. But should you get full value for the price that you're paying, because they expect you to pay full sticker price for the item, whether it's a device or in this case the game. And if it's not fully formed, should be able to get refund for this one, and there should be a penalty for companies, misadvertising their product. And according to him, he has already played, less than 200 hours. That's a lot of hours of gameplay. And he mentioned that is convinced that the game is not yet ready for official release, which is, last month already. And the list of problems that he mentioned is the incessant lag hits. Now, obviously, it destroys the immersion if there's lag, obviously. And there's numerous bugs. And obviously, you could get away for a few bugs here and there. But, a lot. And you tend to notice this. And especially when you see streamers or YouTubers post it online, you can see how hilarious those bugs, I mean, can be funny at times. But obviously, if you're playing it for the first time, it's totally, not enjoyable, to say the least. And as well as the glitches here. And there are a lot of malfunctions in the server. So obviously, you can get disconnected. So meaning your immersion here is disrupted here. And getting disconnected is one thing, but what if it crashes your system or the game, and then eventually your system? Then this is where you see the problem where it can expand tremendously, from breaking your GPU and even harming your CPU itself. So obviously the game developer has to test it thoroughly first in terms of gameplay and its compatibility. And if you're a Windows user, obviously Windows has already launched the latest version of Windows 11. So is it compatible with the latest version, or is it only compatible for the existing one, which is Windows 10 or even older, so to speak, right? So those things has to be ironed out before they even actually release a product. That's why games takes a long time to be developed. So that you can iron out certain things. Now, obviously, companies are always in a bind, in a deadline to produce or release the game in a timely manner, so that they can generate the maximum profit and then go to the next iteration, next game, and so forth and so forth. But obviously, one has to strike a balance between providing a quality product and making a buck here and there. And he goes on to say that it is so dysfunctional and so laggy that it is broken and it is not ready, according to the to Asmongold. Is it Asmongold? Asmongold, I think so. So if even a YouTuber who spends a lot of time playing those games, so that it's sort of a marketing ploy. If they did create a great product in the first place, I think the advertisement will speak for themselves, and a lot of people would be encouraged. Even I would be encouraged, curious enough to say, what is this game all about? Is it a typical MMORPG? Now, obviously, I like RPG games, so I tend to spend a lot of time, hours, tens of hours, hundreds of hours. Actually, the last game that I spent hundreds of hours, even almost 200, is Hollow Knight. Playing it over and over, if it's enjoyable enough, right? Anyway, so the issue here is, right now there are, what do you call this? There are a lot of players playing simultaneously, concurrently, around 200,000 players. So imagine if there's a bug or issues, even crash servers. So imagine all of those 200 players are having a terrible game. And obviously, if they have terrible game, they will tell other players whether to reconsider, should they even play those games. And eventually, people will stop playing the game. And they will go on to the next game, which is more, have better experience. And then what would be left of the game is, no one's playing it. And then, it would harm the business, the developers, and obviously the consumers here, or the gamers, would be losing out here. Obviously, gamers are willing to spend a lot of money, time and money, if the game is tremendous here. And you can see in other games, like obviously the worst case scenario for Cyberpunk, for City Project Red. But in the case of The Witcher 3, I mean, they did made a tremendous game, so a lot of people did use it, did play it, even bought several times from one console to another, from different platforms, and so forth. Anyway, so we'll see if the game will make any improvements in the future here. Anyway, so Next is we were talking about in our previous live stream regarding how the ghost cities, the real estate works in China here with regards to making investments on the assumption of the growth or the movement of people from rural areas to urban areas, and there was a miscalculation there. And obviously if there's a miscalculation and if you grew too fast where there's little to no people moving into the city, you create these ghost cities, which was well documented through documentaries, and I think I saw the documentary from 60 Minutes, I think. Anyway, and behind all of this, the company that has been, building or has been the proponent behind it is the developer Evergrande, and obviously being able to develop those cities quickly, getting the necessary funds. Obviously they have to borrow money from banks, and in our last discussion they were close to shutting down, to defaulting, not being able to pay their debts, which can have a detrimental impact to their business, but not just to their business but to the economy as well, because obviously the proponents behind Evergrande's push for developing those ghost cities is the government also. So it kind of inflates the supply and demand, and if the government encourages developers to build more city, not necessarily cities, but build more real estate, like in this case condominiums, towering buildings within a city block radius, to encourage people to move from the provincial area to city area here. Now, question here is, what will happen if the company were to suddenly fold, and there's going to be a major fallout, and obviously it goes way beyond not just in a corporation standpoint, from a business standpoint, but in the economy as well here. And as you can see here, the question is, how will China manage to deal with this situation? And obviously one of the ways that they're doing is to limit or restrict shareholders from selling off their property. So technically you're stuck with it for a certain period of time, and obviously the government is looking for other ways to stave off, obviously pushing for the company to find ways to pay off its debt, which they did. But how long can they sustain that is the main question here. So as you can see here, the company was able to pay off almost 90 million of interest. That's just the interest, not the principal amount. So their enormous debt of 300 billion is still, it's a key concern here. How are they able to pay off unless the value of those properties keeps on rising? Because if it suddenly crashes down, which can happen, like how the bubble burst from in the United States back in 2007, 2008, I can't remember, right? That value will be wiped out, and can have significant repercussions for the economy, and obviously China, if it affects China, can have an effect on the rest of the world as well. So here you can see that if the company fails, China's order of priority when it comes to managing defaults will be home buyers first. Then you have creditors and existing shareholders. So all of those people who have a stake in the real estate where Evergrande has invested, you can see there are a lot of people who stands to lose a lot of money here. Question is, what can be done about it? Will it continue, or will there be a resolution to address this problem here? So let's see here. So they were able to avoid the default as mentioned earlier, right? But the 300 billion dollars of debt is still looming here, which is what does the company do here? If it collapses, and as mentioned here, the repercussion will be felt far and wide, not just in China, but I think other individuals who have invested abroad could be affected, and obviously the company who has borrowed money from different financial institutions could significantly hamper the potential growth in their economy here. And obviously for the not just the company, sorry, for the government, the government is to protect the home buyers first, obviously to maintain the value here or even grow it. But you can only sustain up to a certain point, right? Unless you government in not to say in influences, but invests more. And but the problem here is those properties that have been built already, no one is using it. That's a concerning part. And those buildings are still brand new considering, and yet it's not being utilized, so no additional income has been generated. And obviously with properties, it deteriorates over time, so the depreciation is alarming. And if no one's using it, taking care of those facilities, eventually over time, whether it's years or even decades down the line, the negative effects of the choice of the government, in this case the company, of not doing anything about the properties here or not being utilized, will be a big issue here in the long run here. Now, obviously, their first priority is maintaining social stability. Obviously, the perception of people here, whether within the country or in other regions here, is to stave off bankruptcies. Obviously, it's not good if your company is not able to pay off debt, and will have negative impact to your creditors here. So another is that government will prioritize the home buyers. So how they protect the home buyers will be the key here. I mean, will they be allowed to sell those properties while it still has a value, so to speak? Or will they be required to hold on to those properties for as long as they can, so that the value will not evaporate quickly here? And obviously, if the company here, Evergrande, collapses, so government or local government will try to secure the remaining Evergrande assets in their own localities and ask developers to take over the value. So meaning reuse the properties per se. But again, it goes back to the main question: what happens to those initial investors who invested in the company in the first place or in their properties here? So will it default so that they can resell it, or something else? And it was mentioned that they'll borrow money from banks and continue to deliver homes to the previous buyers of Evergrande property. So again, will that be a long-term solution here, or it's just a doomsday device or time bomb ticking, and we're just waiting a matter of when, rather than if it's going to happen? Now, what's interesting, more than 90% of households in China are homeowners. So a lot of people are investing in properties thinking that the value will appreciate over time. Now, according to the research here, compared to the US, it only has 65% of home ownership here. So that's significantly higher, meaning majority of households in China are thinking or considering buying as a good investment here. But obviously, if those properties are not being utilized or properly developed, that things could turn sour very quickly here. So another is the problem with those lenders. So meaning borrowing money from lenders or creditors here, how will this be dealt? Obviously, you can only, if they're only paying their debts in terms of interest, that's only the what do you call it? Is it the excess? Yeah, the excess, not the principal of the money that you already borrowed. So if money is not coming in, you're not able to generate more, and you're just only enough to pay or cover the debt, then it's not a recipe for success as well. Now, among the company's main lenders, you have Shenzhen Bank. The question here is, will they still be allowed, or will the financial institution collect their debts here? Evergrande got its financing from absolutely everyone. So from banks, investors, suppliers, customers, and even employees. So obviously there's a lot of risk involved. If everything were to turn sour, all of those people or groups will be affected significantly. And as what happened in the financial crisis last time that the United States encountered, especially with the bubble burst in the real estate, could be detrimental here. And obviously at the end of the day, which is kind of concerning, even though the shareholders are the one who have invested heavily in the company, they're the last one who's going to be protected here. And obviously investing is a risk and reward scenario here. So Question here is, what will happen now? And what's being asked here, that even the founder should use their own resources or their money to pay the debts, rather than what do you call this, rather than get all the dividends or the value it has generated over time. But the value of the company has already faltered here, and about 70% of the shares, which belongs to the family, has been wiped out already. And question is, how long before the company suffers tremendously to the point that they go bankrupt, or will another company take over, buy them out, and so forth here. And billions of dollars can be mentioned easily and can be wiped out quickly. And question here is there a long-term solution on the horizon here, or we're stuck? If you're one of those shareholders, are you stuck with it forever, or should you jump shit as early as possible? We'll see. Anyway, so lastly, we have one of the very popular TV series, Netflix, which I already recently finished watching it, the TV series Squid Game, which when I first saw the TV series, it looks similar to the film Hunger Games, where the reality of playing games, there are severe repercussions, and it was not for the faint-hearted, especially for the violence that it shows there. But that's somewhat reality. But what's interesting here is with regards to how the game is reflected based on the society in Korea here, South Korea in particular. So the question here is it more fictional, or is it something based on grounded reality here? Anyway, so according to the article here, so the millennials are saying that the lives aren't any much different from the game, from the TV series itself, wherein people were enamored of winning a lot of money, but they didn't realize the repercussions of joining the game, that you have to sign off your lives here. And it all started with when people were a growing amount of debt. Question is, how are you able to accumulate that much debt? Because of spending spree, going on a spending spree, and not being responsible enough to manage your finances of what you can and can't do in reality. So you keep on buying stuff, so credit card bills are mounting, and then mortgaging your houses, and then not being able to pay those bills on time, and not happy with the jobs that you're with right now, and obviously builds a lot of frustration, and the cycles keeps continuing and on, and eventually when you reach a certain point that you cannot handle it anymore, you seem hopeless. And this is where the current scenario of the game here, where they will offer you a way out to solve your problems by if you wanted to earn a substantial amount of money, meaning billions of won, all you have to do is play a game. Now, what they didn't know in the game is there are consequences for playing the game. Now, I won't spoil the story for everyone who haven't watched it, but the point here is, the reality is somewhat closer to what the TV series is showcasing here, which makes a lot of sense because there's have been a lot of articles, and I think there was a video from Asian Boss, I think, where they interviewed one of the Korean citizens there, South Korean citizens, with regards to they were in debt, and the collectors were knocking at their doors to ask for the payment here, and he has his credit card. He keeps on purchasing items that technically doesn't need, and if you see his room, that there's a plethora of items that he bought left and right. Obviously, you have this early high of being able to purchase. Simply swipe the card and buy the item, bring it home, and you're happy. But what you don't realize is the consequence later on, wherein when you buy an item, obviously you have to pay for it. How are you going to pay for it? Now, obviously, not thinking of the repercussion, you will reach a certain limit, then you will not be able to use the credit card anymore, and the collectors will be knocking at your door, collecting your debt here, and not being able to do that. Some will even go to extreme measures by, going to loan sharks to get extra cash, and then it gets even worse and worse and worse. And as mentioned, it reflects closely to what reality is in South Korea to the game itself here. Let's see here. So here is, we have an example here, right? So they see that the the experience here of suicides has been increasing because of the personal problems that people have with regards to social and professional problems, especially with the pandemic, right? And obviously with the growing culture of materialism that people needs to buy more and more and more if they cannot sustain themselves with with the income that they're earning or the type of job that they're earning, uh, you know becomes a doom and gloom scenario here, right? And the unfulfilled dreams, the frustration, and obviously the debt that it's growing, and it's growing slowly over time here, which is kind of alarming here, especially even though they're a progressive developed country, but they have social issues that's be creeping up slowly and slowly, and obviously it's manifesting in many aspects, and one of those is people looking for an out or relief. That's why the material aspect is one of their main sources of release, so to speak here. And you can see here in 2021 alone, the total amount of debt from South Koreans has already ran up more than 1.5 trillion dollars. That's significantly higher, and compared to the country's GDP of only 1.63 trillion, so it's not far behind. So if you look closely, according to a 2018 survey, found that Koreans typically own around $44,000 of debt per household. That's pretty significant. Question is, why are they going into debt that high? I mean, knowing if you cannot afford it, why would you go into debt significantly? And obviously there's a lot more social issues that's ducktail to this outcome here. So this is as a result, not because of this. And obviously the unforgiving realities of lives for some young Koreans, which are the main culprits here, are stuck with their dead end jobs here. So you could just imagine the coincidence that what's happening in the real world is manifesting in the fact that the TV series was made in the first place. And obviously the director, is it the director or the creator of the TV series, obviously somewhat base it on on his experience in reality and as what he sees. And obviously seeing those is not easy, right? So question here is, will there be a long-term solution to this one? Let's see here. Where the heck is it? There you go. So according to him, he mentions, if someone told me right now you could gamble your life to have your debt cleared and become a millionaire, obviously a lot of people will be enticed. And obviously reality is totally different with fiction, and having an easy way out is not, that's why a lot of people are enamored from trying to win the lotto. And not many can win it. And even if you were to win it, if you were to look at its history, it never turns out well for those lotto winners, because they tend to not manage it properly. And if you're not properly educated, in a sense that you tend to spend more of it, and it tends to spend quickly, and you go back to where you began, in just a short span of time, rather than you putting it to good use, because you already know how to manage money. So it is what it is here. So question here is, how does the society deal with it? Now, obviously the government is trying to find ways to mitigate that social issue, but it's a difficult and long, arduous process. And at the end of the day, I kind of find it funny, not necessarily funny the situation, but the popularity of the series, right, has caught the attention of people around the world. Even one of the biggest superstars, NBA superstars, LeBron James, who followed the series, which I kind of find it funny, he criticized with regards how he was not too thrilled regards to the ending of the story, which I won't say it's a bad ending, but it makes sense based on the arc from how it began to where it is, or how it ended here. But anyway, the I don't know if it's the director or the creator made a comment also with regards to if he weren't too happy about the ending, he could create his own Squid Game story and change the narrative there and change the ending here. And what I find it funny also is the LeBron James is criticizing a very successful TV series here, while on the other hand, his film Space Jam did terribly in the box office. He spent so much time in promoting it early this year, and yet look at the results, right? And regardless of if he liked or didn't like the ending here, people still tune in to watch the series itself. And I think there were rumors that there's going to be a sequel here. I don't know if it's a continuation of the main story here, but what's interesting here is, I got curious enough to start watching it, and I watched the whole first season, and it was interesting. It reminded me of how the Hunger Games were. Obviously, the Hunger Games were showcased in several films, but in this case, in a TV series, just like one movie that was segmented into the different episodes here. Now, have you watched the series here? If not, I highly recommend watching that series. Not for the faint of heart, especially of the nature of the violence here, but the story wise, it's okay. I mean, I enjoyed it. It wasn't that bad. Anyway, I think that concludes our discussion. Anyway, thanks for watching. Come back again on Wednesday for more business update. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button. Also, you can leave your comments down below if you have any questions or suggestions for the topics that was discussed today. Anyway, as always, I'll see you in the next one. Take care.